Good afternoon, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us today for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association's Business Growth Roundtable on this beautiful day. We at NGBIA are thrilled to have helped create this incredible initiative with such amazing and talented women. For those of you new to NJBIA, we are the nation's largest statewide business association, representing about 1/4 of all New Jersey employees. We offer custom development opportunities with our visibility through our events, our magazine ads, our podcast, our television shows, and also money-saving discounts for opportunities for your business, such as 401k, payroll, healthcare, training, and also 24-hour HR support. I'm Anthony Arena, one of the executives here at NJBIA. If you are interested in more information, I will drop my information in the chat. Also, just to keep some upcoming events here at NJBIA, we have our energy conference taking place October 15th at Delta Hotels in Island, New Jersey. You can find information online. I will put that in the chat, as well as our membership celebration taking place October 17th at the Molly Pitcher Inn in Red Bank, New Jersey. And with that being said, I'll now turn it over to this incredible cast of characters. Michelle Hagan, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And hello and welcome, everyone. I am Michelle Hagan, president and partner at C3 Workplace. For 30 years, we've been helping companies grow and succeed by providing support and advisory services around operations, business development, marketing, and finance. We allow growing teams and business owners to work smarter by focusing on that which truly drives their business forward. In other words, working on their business and not in their business. Our clients know that by bringing us in to build systems that are efficient, connected, and executable, they are laying the foundation for a company that will run and grow without them involved in every little detail. So before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. We are recording the event today. You will get a link after the event. We will allow time for Q&A at the end. So please use the Q&A section versus the chat, but please do use the chat to introduce yourself. You're in a room with a whole bunch of people who are interested in what you are interested in, and this is a great opportunity to network. So please use that chat. Before I hand it over to Vicki to acknowledge our wonderful sponsors, I'd like to mention in November is our next roundtable event. The Paradigm will present on mastering marketing automation strategies for success. And Kelly will drop that link in the chat so that way you can get registered today. That should be another good one. So with that said, I will hand it over to our vibrant Vicki.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your introduction. Now I have a requirement to be sparkly. Hello, everyone. I'm Vicki Hart, Director of Client Engagement at Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are an award-winning strategic agency recognized for our excellence in assisting businesses with a complex sale and enhancing the efficiency of sales teams. How do we achieve such remarkable results? By leveraging websites as powerful marketing tools, implementing strategic thinking to drive conversions, and leveraging data and marketing automation to make informed decisions. So if you're seeking to expand and elevate your business or inject purpose into your lead gen efforts, let's connect for a meaningful conversation on how we can help achieve your goals. Now, being part of this roundtable is just an amazing opportunity. And we can't do this without our friends. As you can see, we have many friends here. And I would like to acknowledge our first sponsor, Susie McLean from Summit Place Financial. Summit Place Financial Advisors offers focused, individualized attention, serving a select group of highly successful people like you who have outgrown mass market institutions. Success often brings complex investment, tax, and estate planning challenges. Summit Place offers experienced, personalized, and disciplined guidance to help achieve your financial goals, help simplify wealth opportunistically. They collaborate with trusted professionals to provide a holistic, expert approach to your financial journey. And of course, Summit Place is SEC registered firm. They do not sell products, earn commissions, or have high quotas to meet. They work solely in your best interest with no hidden fees or agendas. Our next sponsor is my friend Mark Shore from Atlas Consulting Services, Employee Benefits Consulting. Atlas Consulting Services is a full-service insurance brokerage, and they specialize with an expertise in sophisticated and multifaceted employee benefit programs, including health, dental, vision, and disability, retirement, and more. ACS handles all aspects of employer-sponsored benefits, from plan implementation to employee communication and enrollment to claims resolution to regulatory monitoring of state and federal compliance laws. They are trusted partners with many of the region's most prestigious companies, law firms, and hedge funds, as well as small businesses from Main Street to Wall Street. I know Mark personally and can tell you that he works so hard for his clients because he really does care. And now, in the theme of this amazing event, I'm delighted to introduce my friend, Cal Thomas of Sandler Training. And I always say this, what can I say about Sandler Training? And not enough is always the answer. Let me emphasize the profound impact that Sandler has had on me and our team. Our transformation from 40% close rate to a staggering 70% close rate speaks volumes about the effectiveness of this program. Investing in Sandler isn't just about improving sales, it's about investing in the future of your business and securing your success. Trust me, it is a game changer that you simply cannot afford to overlook. Please reach out to our friend Cal Thomas, and you're going to hear from, I'm not going to spoil it, I'm going to allow Cal to do the introduction, but you're going to hear some wonderful things from Sandler today. And without further ado, I am honored to pass the baton to my friend Cal. Cal, take it away.
Hey, Vicki, it's always hard to follow someone who otherwise means you well and gives an introduction that's hard to follow up on. So thanks. And you guys are a great team to work with, as is C3. And we spent a long time working with NJBIA as well. So to cut the commercials down, I'm going to be real quick. Dave Mattson doesn't need a lot of introduction. Dave is the executive chairman of, come on up, Dave, the executive chairman of Sandler all around the world. And I've been here for a fair bit over a decade. Dave, how long have you been part of Sandler?
Well, 38 years.
38
I hate to say it out loud, but 38 years.
It is. So Dave's going to talk about team selling and why it's relevant and what it is. And I'm going to disappear and Dave, just let you go at it. But I want to ask this first question is, I think there's some misunderstanding or misnomers about what does team selling mean?
Yeah.
It means maybe things in larger companies, different things in smaller companies and mid-market. Can you take, I don't know, 12 seconds and give a quick definition, then I'll let you go on your way.
Yeah, thanks. I think that if we just set the definition for a second, it's when you're in a sales situation when there's more than just yourself. So if you're looking around and it's just not you, then you're in a team sales situation. Certainly, I would say also that on the buying side, if you're selling to somebody other than a single individual, you're in a team buy situation. And we're going to talk about both of those right now. But I talk to people like, well, we don't team sell, Cal. We've got partners, or I go with my sales manager occasionally, or I'm an owner, I go with my employee. That's not team selling. It is team selling under the definition of what we're going to talk about today. So we're not talking about, bringing 30 people on a call throughout the process. We're talking, typically onesies and twosies, really. It could be larger depending on what you do, but that's a pretty good definition, I think. And so what I'd like to do is bring you some topics and concepts that we have really gotten from clients around the world. We work with 50,000 people a year. That's an awful lot of people if you think about it. A lot of owners, a lot of sales leaders, a lot of salespeople, a lot of marketing, lots of different people who are touching revenue all the time. And so we see long selling cycles, short selling cycles, consultative sales, transactional sales, and there's a ton of patterns that we've witnessed. And I want to share with you what those patterns are and then how it ties into team selling. And I know we have a lot of clients on the line, so thank you very much for all your support in Sandler. And as Vicki said, you may not know it, by the way, we've got over 400 performance consultants around the world. So we're in 31 different countries now. And actually one of our top people happens to be Cal Thomas. So you're in good hands for those who are working with Cal, as Vicki is. You're in good hands for those that are thinking about it. out of anyone you could pick, you're going to do great with Cal. So what are we going to talk about here, right? One is like what's going on in the outside world that is changing, and you can decide whether you see some of these or all of these, but I'm going to tie it into the team selling concept here. But certainly we've got things that are going out in the outside world. This stuff's been happening now for a little while now, but you certainly got supply chain issues. Now you can decide whether that fits in your world or not. But what are the big changes that are going on in the marketplace that affect team selling? One, I would say, is the cost of money. Now, what does that have to do with team selling? The cost of money. Well, if you think about the cost of money, interest rates, right? We're all small business owners, or we all work for small businesses. The fact of the matter is when money is more expensive, then decisions become more conservative, right? Just fact, because we're not going to throw a bucket full of money at an idea. We want to make sure it's a good idea that we could actually implement. So decisions become very conservative. They tend to be a little longer now, right? So competition used to be, no decision. It is, but really no decisions now, sometimes driven by cost of cash, money. So you've got the slower decisions. Here's something else that's going on that really affects team selling, which is on the buying side, two things have occurred now that they're making more conservative decisions based on the cost of money. It's more of a universal company-wide decision. Now think about that for a second. Even in a company like Sandler, I could have one leader making a decision on a piece of software, another leader making a decision on another piece of software. That's no longer true. We're not allowing individual leaders within organizations to make their own decisions. We're saying, hey, we're going to pick a software that is good for the company. So we're making universal decisions, which probably didn't happen prior to 2020. Everyone's kind of making their own thing. But now that's not true. So you may find companies are trying to make less partners, but more universal decisions. And because that's true, now there's more people involved. So the second thing that's really affecting team selling is remote. First of all, as a salesperson, you know, the remote world, it's tougher to engage people. That's like fact. But the other thing is it's easier for more people to get involved in the buying decision because, you know, pre-COVID, as an example, if you had a committee, they'd all have to get into a central location. So if they weren't, you know, located in Jersey, somebody would have to fly from Kansas City to sit in the meeting to watch all the suppliers come through the beauty pageant and, you know, decide who's the best partner and all that stuff. But that's like a 2 or 3 day commitment. Now I just turn on Zoom, and I've committed 45 minutes. So you've got a lot more people involved and a lot more people care because now the decision is affecting my department as well, because I didn't really care what Mary was doing with her, you know, technology decision as an example. Who cares what she's doing? I only care what I'm doing. But now the company is forcing me to really pick one horse, as they say. So now I'm involved, and Zoom makes it more involved. So it's becoming complicated, right? The sellers, you know, we see a ton of them, as I said, but the buyers are also saying it's becoming complicated. It's becoming complicated for lots of different reasons, but a couple simple ones are, more people have different pain points, or the different personas care about different things when they're purchasing something. So that's complicated on their side, right? Like, we don't need all the functionality in my group for what this software does. Who cares? Well, they care. And so you got that complexity going on. But technology, first of all, technology has accelerated at such a pace since 2020. It's never been seen, and it's not going to slow down. But technology's also allowed the buyers to do a lot more on their own, and we're going to talk about that. And sometimes that confuses the issue. But also what goes on is the complexity is really what you see here. This big bowl of spaghetti, if I'll call it that for a second, is really a representation of the buying process now. If you think about that, right? Now, you may say, we can argue, well, that's very complex. I typically call on very small companies. They don't have this many decision points or people involved. Maybe true, but it also may be true that there's a lot going on that you don't know about. And so you can talk whether it's a HubSpot statistic, a Salesforce.com statistic, or a Forrester or a Gartner. You know, on the low end, they're going to say it's 6 to 8 people involved, which is definitely true on my end, on my company. All the way up to Gartner say there's 19 different types of people involved, whether they're employees, outside consultants, trusted advisors, whatever. There's a ton of people involved, which makes a lot of sense based on what I've said about cost of money. So you may see this and say, yeah, a lot more decision, people involved today, not like this. This is like, wow. But I think we can all agree there's more people involved in the decision process today than there has been in the past. So what does that matter? Well, 24% of the salespeople say, I lead the buyer-seller dance. So I'm leading the dance, right? So I'm going back here. I'm going to lead the dance through this sophisticated process of how people are making decisions. And that's awesome. By the way, 24%, way too low. It's way too low, right? It should be much higher than that. But 24% of them says, I'm leading the dance. I'll call it the buyer-seller dance. But 65% of the people saying, as a buyer, we're controlling how the buying process is going, not the salespeople. We are leading the dance. We're telling you what's needed, when it's needed, and what we want. Now, that sounds like a salesperson's dream if you think about it. I mean, how cool would it be if they were actually coming in and say, hey, salesperson, before you speak, let me tell you exactly what our problem is. Here's my budget. Here's how I make decisions. And by the way, here's what you have to say to get my business. That would be awesome. That's not what this means, though, but that would be awesome. Here's the bigger thing. A lot of people, 68% of the buyers, are getting us as sales groups involved way farther in the buying process than they've ever had in the past. We've always heard, like, listen, we're not in the education business anymore as a salesperson. We're now connecting dots. You've heard about this now for a long, long time. The problem is when we've got 68% of the people bringing us in at the very last minute, how are we reacting and what do we do from a team selling perspective? Because my belief system is, it is that complex sales landscape in the buyer journey. We need to do things differently. We need to sell differently than we've sold in the past. That doesn't mean we're throwing out our sales forces. That's not what it means. But what it does mean is that what got us to the success that we are today isn't necessarily going to get us there tomorrow. And I know that's an old cliche. I get it, but it is really true. I spend more time now doing executive coaching on what's my sales force, what's my customer focusing group looking like tomorrow, because it's changing rapidly. So it's a big concern for most leaders, but I do think we're going to need a different type. So if I go back for a second, if I've got 65% of the people saying, hey, I'm leading the dance, and I've got 68% of the buyers saying, I lead the dance, but guess what? I'm not even going to bring them in if I do bring them in, meaning the salesperson, until the very end. Wow. So what does that mean exactly? Well, if you step back for a second, that means we better start paying attention to the buyer journey, right? Most of the time, salespeople are only concerned about what should I do in this situation? How do I react? What do I say? It's like really seller-focused stuff, which has gotten us far. And I'm not saying you should throw that out because you shouldn't. However, we should be focusing in on the buyer as well, more now than ever because of technology. So what are those stages? Now, the stages I'm going to share with you could take you 15 minutes to go through, could take you 15 days, could take you 15 months, but they do occur, right? And you can argue whether, hey, that's the wrong term, but study after study will tell you there's 4 major parts. What are they? First is engagement, right? That's where a company believes they have a problem or knows they have a problem. And so now what they're doing is they're talking about it. They're talking amongst each other. Hey, what's the issue? How do you think this is caused? What's this? What's that? They're talking to people that they respect outside of the organization, within the organization, at different parts of the, like I'm talking to somebody else in a different division, all that stuff. But it's now, I'll call it the chatter phase, right? We're talking about it. We're trying to figure out what's what here. And there's a lot of Googling going on. And what does that mean for a second? Look, my kids, I have 5 kids. My kids are PhDs at Google University. I mean, every time there's a problem about anything, I mean, one of my grandkids will cough a certain way. They're on Google. Oh my gosh, I think this is a new disease that's popped up that I thought was dormant since 1912. I mean, they're Google everything, right? And sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're wrong. And so we have to really pay attention to, in the buying process, are they working on a false premise or they've truly figured it out? Sandler used to have this one-liner: the problem that the prospect brings you is never the real problem. And that was way before technology, but it is true. And we just have to verify that. And I'll talk about that in a second. So that's what I'm going to call the chatter phase. We're engaged now, right? Now they go to consideration. What is that? They're considering a bunch of different things. Like, what are my options here? Like, what are the options? Should we do X? Should we do Y? Hey, should we do it internally or should we go external? Is there a hybrid that we should do by picking some partner in addition to doing some stuff internally? They're deciding and considering all the different options that they could pick from. Are they even qualified to do these types of things? They're considering also, should I just live with my problem? Look, we've all complained about stuff, right? And we're like, yeah, we've been complaining about that for like 10 years. Who cares? Well, maybe that's what's happening too. So every time somebody is complaining about something doesn't mean they're actually going to fix it. That just means they're complaining about it. So in the consideration phase, it's like they're considering all their options of who, of what, and of when, right? Then we move to what I'm going to call the decision step. The decision step says, okay, we've got a lot of stuff under consideration. Who or how are we actually going to proceed? Are we deciding that we're going to do it on our own? Forget the partners, meaning you. Are we going to do a hybrid? Are we going to, pick one of these 4 suppliers that we've come in as potential partners? Who are we actually going to pick to come in? What's our decision criteria? Which, by the way, they never actually formalize. And then what's that decision? Now, that could just fester a lot because the longer the decision process, the more likely they have not done all of the heavy lifting ahead of time to make sure the buying team is aligned, which we'll get to in a second. Advocacy is the raving fans, right? So I'm past it. We're now moving. You guys have done exactly what you're supposed to be doing, which is to wow your client. And now they're advocates, raving fans, selling more products and services, them giving you awesome referrals, all of that stuff. That's the buying process. Now, salespeople, owners, your sales motion should mirror where they are in the process. Your messaging, your marketing messaging should mirror where they are, right? Just a FYI here. But I said something earlier, you should trust because my kids have PhDs in Google. Well, so does everybody, buyer, right? Now you got ChatGPT. And so when you're doing ChatGPT, you've got hallucinations, you got this, but it's a lot better than it was, but we have to trust and verify what they're telling us. So as an example, I want you to be a doctor. So doctors, let's look at doctors. You go in as a prospect and you say, doc, I got a back problem. Listen, I know it's a back problem. Here's what happens. I've looked it up. I've really done a lot of research. It's definitely my lower back. This vertebrae right here, I think is not aligned. I need a prescription. The doctor doesn't act like a salesperson and says, wow, hey, let me tell you about how we're going to solve that. And here's your prescription. They don't suffer from premature presentation syndrome, right? They're going to get sued for malpractice. So what do? They trust what you say, but they verify. Well, that's awesome. That's great. Hey, let me ask you a couple of questions. And then they ask you a ton of questions. And what they're doing is they're looking for, are you bringing them a symptom? Are you bringing them the real problem? They're asking questions based on their product knowledge, based on their experience like we do, to verify what you're saying is the real problem. They don't want to get sued. But you know what else happens when they ask those questions? You're creating trust and credibility and all the things. The more questions my doctor asks me, the more I love them, right? It's the one who just says nothing. They just writes a prescript. And I'm like, wow, I don't know. I don't feel it, right? So, but here's what I ask. When people call me and they'll say for the very first time, they'll say, okay, they'll call me up and I'll say, hey, listen, thanks for calling. Hey, got a couple questions for you. Because they'll say, hey, Dave, I got this problem. I'll literally say, when I talk to companies for the first time, I always find like there are 1 or 2 spots. Number one is they have clearly identified a problem. They know what it is. They can prove it out. They've got a business case. They understand the financial impact of the issue. And they're really now just in a position for looking for the right type of partner to help solve that problem. That's one group. There's this big group over here, however, which is they think they know there's a problem. They think they know what it is. They're not 100% sure, but they're looking for a company to come in and help them better identify what the problem is, so then they can go find the best partner for them. Which bucket are you in? And I'll do that every single time. Why? First of all, I like the A-B approach. You always give prospects two choices, like which buckets are you in? Because that'll tell you something. But I'm going to trust and verify. I'm going to go do all of that. And then I'm going to ask some questions. Now, you can decide the questions that you're going to ask, but these are just simple questions. They're doctor type questions. For Sandler clients, you'll see that these are some pain funnel questions that we've taught you. But I'm asking because the reason why I'm doing that, and here's my line, by the way, when I transition. If they say to me, no, we know what the problem is, we're just looking for a partner that can help us solve it, I always say, that's great. That's awesome. Can I step back for just a second and ask you a couple questions so I can get caught up on what you know? So therefore, I can provide you the best solution possible. So we can just go backwards for 5 or 6 minutes here. So I'm asking for permission to go backwards in time to ask questions to verify and their understanding, but to verify that's the real issue and to make sure that I understand the issue. I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. One, if I don't ask permission to go back and ask for questions, they're upset because they showed here thinking I'm going to do a demo or presentation or something because they're in that mode, right? Hey, this is where we are. I just told you, show me something. I'm going to be like, I'm happy to align myself, happy to. Shh, let me just ask a couple questions so I can do what you want more effectively, more efficiently. So I'm doing it for them. I'm really doing it for both of us, right? So that's always important. But I also want you to do something else when they call and say, I've got X problem. X problem is like very myopic. They have this is my issue, and I'll use in my world. You come to me and say, I've got low close rates, right? So, yep, you've done a ton of due diligence. That's awesome. But I want to expand the conversation, and I do it through those questions I just showed you. But I want to expand it because I want to talk about like what causes that. Is it, hey, poor deal review? Is it you have no qualification steps? What is it? And I also want to know if you have a low close rate, what's the effect of that? You're probably discounting deals to get them through the funnel, right? Your support people aren't available because they didn't know the deal was closing. So now all the people who are supposed to be implementing the things are already on another project, or you got people on the beach waiting for a project month after month after month after month. I mean, the beach has electricity and running water. They've been on that beach for so long, waiting for an engagement. So either way, I want to expand it. Why? Super credible on my end, because now they truly believe, wait a minute, I heard what you said. Let me ask you some other questions. Now I'm in consultant mode. I'm asking the questions, building credibility, building trust, but also a better solution. Because if I just go solve the problem that they bring me, I may not solve the holistic issue, and I'm going to have an unhappy camper with no advocacy on the back end of that buying process. So I want to make sure I weave that all together. So I give them a good solution that fixes the whole problem, right? Just not a part of the problem. So that's why I'm doing this. You should think about that all the time. Now, all this, let's weave this back in for a second, because I think in today's world, team selling, individual selling, we need to simplify what's going on. I've already talked to you. I'm about to talk to you about how many people are involved in the selling process. The buying process, we know there's a ton of people. But we also know that study after study will say, if a client's looking for information like, hey, we've made a decision, I just want the best buyer or the best partner. Okay. When you're giving them information, I need more information on an X. Hey, I'll send that right over to you. Hey, I'll do X. Hey, I'll do this as well. And you keep sending them the stuff because it fits their question. Statistically, you're going to close 3 out of 10 of those, right? And the second is the telling part. Now, by the way, giving and telling are kissing cousins. They're both showing up and throwing up, right? You're, blah, here it is, just take it. You know, and you're asking a ton of questions, you're just giving it to them. So then it would be like, hey, well, tell me about how this, tell me that. And you're just, well, let me show you there. Let me explain this. Let me do this. And by the way, they could be spot on. I mean, you're like laser guided. The problem with that is that it's not fixing the complexity, because 8 out of 10 deals are closed when you actually make sense of this complexity out there for both sides. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't even understand what that means for a second. And, I was talking to Cal earlier, and he said, like, Dave, what's an example of that? And so I'll pick one here real quick. But if I live in Florida, right? And most of the time I'm dealing with sun. Right now, I'm not dealing with the sun problem. I'm dealing with flooding problems. But let's assume that I got pounded by somebody selling solar, which, by the way, happens on a daily basis, or like banging on my door, you should go to solar. And so I said, well, I don't know enough about that. Hey, I'm not educated. They start sending me like tons of documents. They're handing me stuff. They're giving me stuff on email. And by the way, do I read it all? Not really, because it's like when I have time, I put it when I have time folder, but guess what? I never have time. So it's in the when I get to it folder, or I ask them a ton of questions and they're just rattling stuff. By the way, do you know salespeople put more product knowledge into their talk tracks and they think they're establishing credibility, but they're actually confusing me because I don't know solar. They're using terms that I don't even know, but I don't say, hey, by the way, honestly, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like a solar idiot. I don't say that. I'm like this. Oh, yeah, no, that's a good point there. Yeah, I never thought about that. I don't even know what they're saying. I have no idea what I'm saying. So I'm like, yeah, okay. But they're telling me lots of different stuff. And even the stuff I understand, I have to remember it and sequence it. But if they were making sense of it, it would be like, hey, Dave, over here you mentioned that you do care about the environment and you do care that you're trying to push down your costs, right? There's a way to do this. Now, let me just kind of connect some dots. Solar is going to drive down the costs. You're not here 6 months of the year. So I know your bill's also quite high when you're going away. You're actually going to lower that. So the cost, because you can put it over a 30-year mortgage, right? We can do this over 30 years, like your house mortgage. We can get it to the same price that you're paying for your electricity now. And you can sell some back to the power company. You'll get an overage. So they're going to pay you, because the number that we'll get it to is exactly what you're paying now. So you're not going to be paying like $10,000 a month to save $200, and you get tax credits. Let me explain what that is, because it's complicated. This is the form, and I'm going to fill the form out for you. I'll send it in with you when we decide to move forward, because it takes a lot of time and it's complicated, but you really should get your tax credits, which, by the way, everything's said and done, the government actually pays for the installation. And so they're actually making it stupid simple for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Otherwise, I'd have to go through the documentation they gave me or remember what they told me, and they made it easy for me. Your job in today's environment, especially when you're competing with a ton of people, is to make it easy for them. So let's talk about easy and team selling. So, hey, look, this is the buying process. I already gone over it. Team buying requires team selling. They hunt in packs. We have to sell in packs. It's unrealistic to think that I can sell to one-to-many in tomorrow's environment. It's just not as realistic as it was 3 to 4 years ago, right? So even on your side, when Cal said, hey, what's the definition of team selling? It's when you have other people involved, but it doesn't actually even have to be at the same time if you think about it. Many of you have, let's just do some of these things. In blue are different roles within a sales organization. So you may have a BDR, those are appointment setters, and you have an AE, which is a salesperson. You probably have a sales leader. You probably have the owner, which, by the way, may be the sales leader, which, by the way, the owners, small business owners, who knows more about your company than you do, right? So you're going to be one on those calls. You're like, yeah, I'm the closer. Yeah, bring me in, right? So that's what happens. So we've got a lot of people involved. You got partners. If you've got a channel or you've got a supplier that wants to help you on a call, you got customer success people, lots of different people involved. Now they're handing the batons over. I would tell you, by the way, squirrel hole for a second. More times than not, there's no communication between these sales groups internally. None. So I've got 2 kids that are BDRs, and I've taught them over time. These are the qualification questions you ask. Here's the debrief you give to your AE, and they write some awesome pain points. Here's the upfront contract. Here's the clear future of what they expect, blah, blah, blah. And so it should be just follow the bouncing ball for the salesperson. Not one salesperson reads those notes. And they start from scratch with the prospect on things that were already covered by the BDR. Frustrating for a buyer. And why would you do that? So as owners, as leaders, as salespeople, make sure that the information that you're passing on is actually being utilized by the rest of the sales team. It typically is not. It typically is not. There should be a pre-call planner done with every single call. Like I am a leader. I go on no calls unless there's a pre-call planner. All right, back to this. So what happens? Here's my AE. This is my individual salesperson. I'm calling on multiple buyers. Now, there's only 4 listed here. They're probably not all on the same call. They may be. There's plenty of times we've all been on a sales call where there's 4 or 5 buyers on Zoom. It is easier now, right? Why in today's world would this individual salesperson try to make a group call? It's insane. Now, is it not going to happen? Of course it's going to happen, but it shouldn't be by design every single time. Why would this individual salesperson try to muscle their way through? We've already heard, right, that the buyers are bringing you at the end, but I think 2 things are happening here. One, I think salespeople are afraid to bring in partners. In their mind, everything's half empty. Here's what they say to themselves. It took me 6 months to get this call together. It's going to take you, as my runaway partner, 6.5 minutes to blow this deal. So they're fearful, and they have money on the line. They're like, hey, if I'm going down with my, if I make the mistake, I can only blame myself. I'm not going to get over the fact that you said something wrong. So you've had all this stuff. It could even be lack of self-awareness, right? Sometimes salespeople have egos. So they'd be like, I can do it. I can talk to that sales engineer. Okay, guess what? Here's what I know. Salespeople know a little about a lot of things, right? Because we have to be the jack of all trades. Your buyers, especially, let's pick a persona here, a sales engineer on the buying team, they know a lot about a little. They know their lane. So for you to think that you're an expert in all of those lanes is naive. It's just not true. And also, what you're going to realize, the stats are looking for, the buyers want to make sure that you understand the industry like cold. They want to make sure that you also understand their business needs. Well, think about that for a second. If that's my buying process, how am I going to understand the industry and business needs from every perspective of different buyers that are coming at me? When it was one-on-one, it was kind of easy. When it was one-on-two, it's kind of easy. But you got a lot of people involved from different groups. It's not that easy anymore. It's like almost impossible, to the point where 73% of the organizations are saying, guess what? It's a transactional sale. I'm expecting expertise. I'm expecting industry knowledge. I'm expecting that they understand my problem, but I'm not getting any of that. It's because maybe we're not doing it the right way. So team selling, super important. Here's the thing that I'd like you to do. When you get your teams involved, right? The first thing that I would say, Cal, question?
Yeah, this really resonates a lot, Dave. In fact, this came up very recently. I got a call, and this will make you chuckle, from an HR director of a fintech company, finance company. And she said, Cal, we've heard great things about your program, and I understand you teach presentation skills. Can you send me the curriculum, and how much is it going to cost?
There you go.
Of course, the answer is no, but a little more gently. So we asked a lot of questions. Tell me about what kind of presentations are they making? What kind of feedback have you gotten from your BDRs? When you mentioned to the sales leader, what were his thoughts? And of course, it was just a blank. I don't know. It's, well, maybe it would make sense. And it was a longer conversation, obviously. But we pulled them together because I don't want to put you in a position where you've got to answer questions for them. So we agreed, Sandler terms, right, on a clear future. I brought in my BDR because they were going to bring one of their BDRs, their sales leader, and then their HR person. They didn't have a presentation skills problem.
No.
So a couple of things. I love what you said earlier. The problem they bring is never the problem. What they had was a confidence problem. They had a sales process problem because they were giving demos right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And by having all those other people involved, we were getting them to nod their heads. And my BDR was able to give a little case study and say, well, when I started, I had this problem. I was worried about that, and I was frustrated here.
Awesome.
So that wasn't the problem. So that, and the teams vary for sure, right? This is a
100%.
team. I think in some of the smaller teams, it might be the owner, and who knows what they're going to be, but I need to match them a little bit. So I love that. Thanks.
But you actually did something above and beyond. You forced a team buy situation. There was going to be, they were the gatekeeper. You asked enough questions, but expanded who should be involved in the decision process that wasn't there. So think about that for a second. Your job as a good salesperson is determined by the information you gather, not dispense. So Cal did not go into the throw up all the product knowledge stuff. He asked questions and made it clear that they should have other people involved to make sure they got to the right problem so he could provide the right solution. So that was by design. You may not have caught that, but that's like an A move that we should be doing all the time, for sure. So I think, Cal, you mapped your BDR to their BDR. And I think that's really what we should be thinking about. When you're bringing in other people into a call, you should spend time mapping who should be at that. Now, if you're a company of two, it's going to be pretty quick. You're mapping you and somebody else. But if you have some options here, I map my selling team to who's going to be on the buying team in a couple of different ways. One is by behavioral profiles, right? So if I've got a cut to the chase person or an analytical person, I don't want to have them talk to somebody who's not analytical, big picture, right? Kind of talks in circles. Will drive them insane. So I know my disc style. I cut to the chase. And so if you cut to the chase with me, I love you. I love you. If you spend 48 minutes talking about your weekend, I don't love you, right? So you have to match how they buy. Now, you also have to match experience level. I'll use a sales engineer. Person's been on the job for 30 years at a buyer. You don't want to bring somebody that just graduated college. I'm sure they're smart. I'm sure they're awesome, but the other person's expecting something different. So skill level, experience level, profiles, all that stuff is there. I think it should be important. Job functions, right? Hey, they're doing the same type of job. That's what Cal did. He brought his BDR in to talk to their BDR. So there's a connection, and that's what we're looking for. How can we lower the buyer-seller dance, increase trust, and the environment where people feel comfortable sharing? Because when you've got the right team involved, it is awesome. What does that mean? Everything should be coordinated. Now, I believe the following. Salespeople, you should be playing air traffic controller. You own this call. When I go on a call with my people, I am not the CEO. I'm not the executive chairman. I am Dave, there to support them. They tell me when to speak, what to talk about. So they're air traffic control. They also should do a pre-call planner on everything that we do. So I'm not going on a call with you unless we've sat down and talked about what's the agenda, what's our goal for the call. We want to walk out of there with what questions do you want me to ask as a team member? Now, by the way, super important, because you should tell your team members, this is how much they're going to ask you the following 5 questions. This is what I believe. I don't know it to be true, but I think they're going to ask you these types of questions. You have 5 minutes to answer. You cannot go on for 25 minutes. So tell me as a team member what I should expect, how much time I should spend on my answers, and what questions would you like me as a team member to ask? Super important. I'll always tell my team members, hey, I can't get a start date. You're the engineer. Talk to them. And so my engineer will say, well, one of the things is, I think the thing that is the most important for me is what's your start date, regardless if it's me or anyone else, because we've got to work backwards to make sure that all the pieces are in place for me to meet and exceed that. So all this other stuff doesn't really happen until we have an end date. Have you guys ever thought about that for a second? Yep, January 1st. It took me 6 weeks. I can't get the answer. Why? Because when I show up as a salesperson, they hear Jaws music in the background. He's asking me that question to qualify. He's asking that question to qualify. When my engineer asks it, he's asking that question to do a better job. He's asking that question to do a better job. So arm your people. If you've got a partner that's out of control, you are to blame as a salesperson. You did not do your pre-call planner. Now, if they're out of control every single time, don't bring them on a call. But most of the time, here's what people say. I'm bringing in somebody that's been doing it for 26 years. No preps needed. That is garbage. The longer you've been in your role, the less likely you are to stay on track, because here's what you're saying to yourself. There's nothing they can ask me that I've never heard before. There's nothing, not one thing. And that is probably true because we're all studs and studettes. I get it. But that's not how you're going to run a good call. So I want you to be humble. Listen, let's do this, guys. If you think about football's on now, right? So regardless if you're a football player or not, or a football fan, here's what doesn't happen. The people that are super experienced and really good at their jobs, they go through drills every single week. They practice in the off season. You don't see Michael Jordan or any of the football players saying, being paid a lot of money, don't have to practice anymore. No more drills for me. I don't have to do that. They're kicked off in like 5 seconds. But they also are collaborative. Everyone knows where they're entering, what they're doing, how they're doing it. No one gets in a huddle and says this, all right, group, we've got to make this first down or we're going to lose the game. So you all make a lot of money. You've been doing this for a while. On the count of 3, you do the best you can. Okay, break. That's not how it happens. Everybody is in motion, doing exactly what they should be doing when they should be doing it. Fair, Cal?
Oh, that's great. And Dave, I may have shared this. I know how much you love stories. But I'll keep it quick. It's a great client of ours. They're an engineering firm, and he calls this the Trojan horse method. And to your point, they always have a pre-call plan, and they've practiced ahead. So we've trained a lot of their engineers. We know engineers don't sell, right? That's not okay. But some of the project manager engineers would be in the meetings, and the salesperson would not speak. And the engineers and the project manager they would ask the questions, and they'd get pain, and they'd understand the process. And the salesperson, right? So no Jaws music, would just kind of choreograph and play a traffic controller. But these guys were so good and practiced and trained, right? But they got a lot of that information out. So they matched
100%.
the teams, and it was just phenomenal to watch.
Well, they also do it for out of self-protection. Listen, most team members will tell you when no one's looking, they're brought in too early or too late. And so they don't have enough information to do a really good job. So, but they're afraid to say to a prospect in front of the salesperson, can I ask you a couple of questions so I can get better acclimated here? They don't do that. They pretend like they don't want to look out of control on the company side. So they just kind of jump into what they're accustomed to doing, which is all over the place, right? And that's not really helping the cause at all. But you brought something up, which is leveraging your team members. Look, I love in the pre-call planner, like when if I'm the boss, which I'm a salesperson in this scenario, and I'm going to give it to my engineer, I don't want my prospects to just start blasting questions to my engineer. I'll always in my pre-call planner saying, hey, look, what's the 1 or 2 pieces of information we really need to know in order for you to do your job? Well, we need to know X. Fine. Here's how I start. I have to do my upfront, hi, thanks for inviting us in today, blah, blah, blah. I've got Cal with me here today, sales engineer, as you know, he's going to ask you a lot of questions. But we were talking beforehand, because we've met a couple of different times talking about this particular situation. And Cal asked me a couple of questions that I didn't really know the answer to, but it's relevant. And I thought he could have the opportunity to ask you those questions right up front, so he can then give you a better answer throughout our discussion. Is that okay? I've never had anybody say, I don't want to hear Cal's question. No. They say, absolutely. And so when that happens, I've now passed the baton to Cal, my partner, but he gets to ask questions versus, Cal, tell him everything you know. Tell him how smart you are in 5 seconds or less, Cal. That's not what I want. I want Cal to have power, credibility, asking good questions, all the questions I couldn't get answers to. All that stuff is there.
Yeah. And do you find that that's a little bit of reprogramming sometimes for our
oh my
team
gosh,
members?
You got to practice. It's hard. It's hard because, it's hard on both sides. It's hard for salespeople to give up the control. And it's hard for your partners to break out of what they're currently doing, which is just information, demo, presentation mode versus consulting mode, right? And if you think about human dynamics for a second, it's easier for me, confidence-wise, to just tell you what's on the PowerPoint than it is to actually have a business conversation with you. And so there's this human dynamic risk factor, but the decision criteria is actually what's going to close the business. So if you're utilizing your teams effectively, you are going to build credibility. I promise, just like Cal did with the BDRs. You are going to uncover way more information than you're going to do on your own, because it's one group asking another. Here's 2 other things. You're going to uncover both information and dynamics. What does that mean? I want my partners to call their counterparts on the buying team outside of the sales process. What does that mean, David? Well, guess what? My team members, if I'm on a joint call, they should call the buyers ahead of time. Here's what it sounds like. Hi, Mary. This is Dave Mattson. I'm going to be coming with Michael Norton on our sales side next week. I know the topic is XYZ. I just wanted to call, put a voice to the face when we meet on Zoom. But I also had a couple questions, if you have like 5 minutes, that I would love the answers to so I can better prepare and make sure that I utilize your time effectively. So call ahead of time, introduce yourself, start asking some questions right there. You'll hear information because look, they're not professional buyers. They're going to say, hey, look, it doesn't really matter what I say. This is already a done deal because XYZ has a friend over at blah, blah. They tell you so much information. But also leverage your partners after a call. Have you ever noticed the best questions always come after the call itself? You're like, oh, I should have, like for those that are my age, the V8, the V8 commercials, oh, I should have done this. Well, guess what? Have your partners call right after that call. And here's what it would sound like. Sales engineer, sales engineer. Hey, I didn't get a lot of chance to talk today, but I did have 2 or 3 questions that would help us come back to you with a better solution. Do you have a couple seconds? And now my engineers are talking. Love it, love it, love it. So always make sure that you have your partners armed and ready, time blocks, questions that you should be asking, and you as the salesperson should orchestrate it. So at the end of the day, with all the stuff that's going on, we owe it to ourselves to get super, super crisp on team selling, because the team buying is it's going to be like a matter. It's like AI. Everyone's talking about AI. In about a year from now, it's just going to be technology, right? It's team sell. It's just the way it's going to continue to happen. Now, I'm not saying every situation is this way, but when it happens, you should have a slight edge. You should get more than your fair share of business. And I've watched train wrecks on team sell. And as Cal has talked about, I've seen awesome situations where that was the deciding factor. Here's what you should know, and I'll open it up for questions. How you sell is really how the prospect is looking at you and how they assume you're going to deliver your product or service, because that's how they're judging this relationship. So I think that's really something that you should be paying attention to. Okay, so questions. I know we have a couple minutes here.
That was awesome. Thank you, Dave. There is so much great information in there, and so many visuals that are startling at first, but extremely helpful. So thank you so much. This was an excellent presentation. So much to learn, and I know that the recording is going out this week. So before we end, we do have some questions.
Okay.
Of course, we're never able to get to all of them, but let's just jump right in. Aaron asked, how do you overcome poor or weak team ICP or commission management in firms? How would you overcome that?
Yeah. Cal, you want to take a shot, or you would like me to?
We actually had a session today on ICP, which that's an acronym for ideal client profile, right? And again, it's a lot in the preparation. And if we have an ideal client profile, we already know what the problems are that they have, because they've got 3 of them. They're all the same ones. And we then know what questions to ask. So that forces us to this isn't addressing the second part of the question. I'll give the hard one to Dave. We know what questions to ask. So we don't go in listening to make a solution. We go in listening, uncover what's the real problem here, because it's not presentation skills. It's not that. So if we know our ICP, or ideal customer profile, we also typically know what kind of problems they need to have solved.
Yeah, I think also the fact that this question is coming up on team selling is not your problem, right? I mean, this is a business problem that has to get solved, regardless if you're team selling or not, because if you're not clear on your ideal client profile, you got problems to begin with amongst your salespeople. They're all calling different types of clients. It's just you can't. That's not scalable. You can't sustain that. I do think that all behavior is driven by comp. We know this. We've heard it a million times. So if compensation is one of the reasons why they're not team selling, you've got an issue, right? Now, maybe some people aren't comped, and there's going to be, why am I doing all the work and all they do is play golf and get the commission? So there's always that thing going on. But those things do have to be taken care of, regardless if you're team selling or not, sooner than later. And I just had this problem with an organization that their comp program didn't actually support what their new model was. They changed the model, but they didn't change the comp and how they recognize revenue, because sometimes you just have to recognize it for KPIs and performance reviews. It's not necessarily a commission structure. But when you change process, you got to go back and change the other things that feed into it, or your process isn't going to happen. Just fact.
Just to piggyback off that, Aaron just said that when he mentioned ICP, he actually meant it as incentive comp program. But I believe your second part on commissions probably covers that. Is there anything else you'd want to add to that question before we go
No,
on?
but I would say just make it easy and understandable, and there's no gray areas. What you're going to find is once you allow the people to decide, like here's what some companies do. Oh, they'll decide what the percentage of your help was. That's a disaster, like a flipping disaster. So as an organization, you're going to have to decide, am I double comping? Am I giving double credit? Or am I just saying, hey, look, you're not on a commission structure, but you are on some sort of incentive for a raise or whatever the case may be. You should do X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of ways to do this. And when I have non-commissioned people in our own company, I do other things. So I put that as part of their performance reviews. I give them some bonuses. Maybe it's more than the annual raise. I've sent people on trips because we close big deals with their spouses. They didn't expect that. It cost me nothing, comparatively speaking. And they're like this. I love Sandler. I love Sandler. Because they're, it's all that little stuff that you got to pay attention to.
Yeah, excellent. It's understanding not just the buyers, but the people on your team as well.
Yeah.
It's a great point. The next question we have is from Bing Bernaga, and he asks, how do you craft sort of this higher level of dialogue or language when, depending on who in the team is selling, when they're reaching out to the leadership who are the ultimate decision makers?
How do you craft it with what?
How do you craft a higher level of dialogue or language or perhaps a script and keeping everyone on the same page when reaching out to the ultimate decision makers?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to what Cal said. A lot of that is going to be done in your pre-call because there's certain, like, let's say ultimate decision makers, or how about experts in a particular area? Like I'm way over my skis in certain areas and I shouldn't say a word, right? If you're talking about analytics and stuff like that, like that's not my thing. So I think everyone has their lane. We should be doing it that way. I also think you have to profile your executives because you're going to make assumptions that they're cutting to the chase. But my profile is I cut to the chase. And if I know I'm going to say yes, I go right to anal. Like I'm really detail oriented, like making sure that I don't make a bad decision. You've got to match the buyer. Don't match the title when it comes to changing those discussions. Map the behavioral style of that particular buyer. And you'll find you're going to do far better. And that also is a universal truth to everybody. It may not be the ultimate decision maker, but certainly, I always have, when I have the ultimate decision maker show up on a team sell, I have the team review what we've done thus far and where we are, what's decided next, and what they loved about us. I don't do any reviews when I have an ultimate decision maker show up on a team sell. The buying team does the review, and that'll also tell me how much they know and where the holes are. So that's one thing. The second thing is you should be sending Zooms or Vidyards ahead of time and after the fact to all those people involved in the buying process that may not have been there so they can hear it from you in the language that you want to give it to them in. So I can't tell you how many execs have said, David, you're the only one who sent me a video. I had no idea what they were trying to tell me. You put it in CEO speak for me. Awesome. Appreciate it. And they became clients. So I think you just have to have those slight edge stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Yeah. Cal, anything you'd like to add? We're right at the end of the event, so I don't know if we have any time for any additional questions, but you guys, any last words before we are finishing up here?
Now, I love Dave's point in that question. What I also heard in that question, and I may be misreading it, right? I'm making an assumption, bad for me. But sometimes, what is the message we need to send to somebody? My answer is always, well, let's ask some questions first so we can gather the information so I don't assume that they want to hear whatever I assume that they want to hear. If that's a new player, if it's a senior decision maker, review, or the team may review, and I'm going to ask some more questions. This is what I heard. Can you give it to me from your perspective? It's probably the same. It's never the same, right? Every participant in the buyer in that process in the buying team has a different problem or different perception. And if I don't uncover that by asking questions, my percentage likelihood goes way down.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dave and Cal. This was an excellent event with so much information to be used going forward. And again, thank you all for joining us. Make sure you take a look at the link here and join us next month, where we'll be talking about mastering marketing automation. So thank you all. This was very, very fun and very, very informative. So
Thanks
everybody. Have a great day.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.